Welcome everyone to the 11th episode, Let's Talk ICP. Today we have with us the founder of one of the most useful projects in the entire Web3 ecosystem. The project is called KINIC, a decentralized Web3 content search engine that is part of the content Lego company ICME. Thank you for being with us today, Mr. Wyatt Benno.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I pronounce properly, Wyatt Benno?
Oh, yep, that's correct. Wyatt Benno is correct.
Awesome. Yeah, Wyatt, tell us your story before starting the ICME and start everything in the crypto space. Who is Wyatt? Where you live? Your background?
Yeah, I am a developer by trade. I'm a technical founder. I've been in the startup space for quite a while. I've worked with private equity and VC. My last project was actually a skeuomorphic office space that I started in 2019. I think it was one of the first of its kind where you would actually click on tables in a room and you'd have a meeting virtually in the table space. I sold that last summer to a Swedish gamification company, and I started messing around with other Web3 technologies and found the IC. As a developer working with the IC at the very early days, or when it basically first came out, I realized quickly that it would be difficult for regular people to kind of jump in and get started with it. So I thought, hey, this is hard for me as a developer. There should be a way to make this easier for regular people. So I did a grant for ICME originally. And my partner actually at the time applied for the same thing. Like we had similar ideas at the same time. It was no code for Web3. Like, how do we get canisters up with basically a button press? I won the grant because I am an engineer and he did not. So we ended up like merging again in after the MVP launch, fall 2021. And since then, we've had a lot of fun over the past year or so running ICME. And KINIC, the story behind it is pretty, I guess, understandable. It's not super hard to explain. People were pushing blogs, like say you're a famous blogger or a famous news agency, you come to Web3, you push a blog on the IC, and it's really not discoverable. You lose a lot of SEO value. And in our original roadmap, that was always something I had planned to do, like sometime that year. Find a way to make it so new applications that are built with ICME or built on the IC were easily discovered by anyone. And that was the original motivation. I didn't know if it was technically possible or not at the time. I thought, hey, it would be really cool to have like a data store where anyone can access and find cool stuff on the IC quickly.
Awesome, great. Yeah, I would like to start also before KINIC. You studied at the University of Akron in United States, and then you moved to Japan. Also, you're bilingual. You can speak Japanese in a native way, right? You speak Japanese perfectly?
I actually graduated high school when I was 16 and had time before university. So I wanted to do foreign exchange, and the foreign exchange options for me, like I didn't want to go somewhere similar. Like if we went to England or Canada or somewhere like that, it'd be like, oh, wow, same culture basically. So I wanted like the opposite type of thing. So I chose either Japan, India, or Brazil at the time. I was lucky enough to come to Japan. I just fell in love with the culture and ended up coming back again in university and then again after I graduated. But I think it's, for me, just like one of those things, doing something that's hard is always valuable to me. So like learning a language with the alphabet was a lot of fun. Same with my major, like I majored in economics. And the reason why I didn't major in IT stuff, even though that was my hobby, was just because it was something that was already fun. Like why would I pay someone money to teach me what I'm already doing? So I just like to do new, challenging things. It's an easy way to say it.
Yeah. That's cool. And that, yeah, you mentioned about the code programming. You have experience more than 7 years to coding, programming. You have a knowledge in different programs, language programs. You have an expert in a wide range of front and back end technologies, languages like Node, Ruby, Golang, Java, Elixir, Python, C, Rust. Also in database, use Mongo, Elasticsearch, Postgres, MySQL. That's crazy. And then the front end, Angular, ELM, React, Backbone. Also Web3 with the Internet Computer Programming Language, Motoko for sure, and Solidity. We can say undoubtedly programming is one of your passions. How you can learn all of these languages? Behind the scenes, there are a lot of work, there are a lot of investigation and practice and trial and error. Yeah, can you explain a little bit more about all of this, your path for learn and be like an expert in all of these programming languages?
Yeah, I think it's important to say I was fortunate as a kid as we had a computer. Like I know a lot of households, especially here in Japan, the kids didn't have computers until like 18 plus or more, or internet access. In the United States, we generally had like Windows 95, some machine laying around somewhere to mess around with. And even if we didn't have that, we had the TI-84 like calculator that was mandated for most math classes. I think the first time I ever programmed was actually on that thing, which was like BASIC was the name of the programming language, and we would all program games. And rather than doing classwork, we would play the games that we programmed on our calculators. So it's just like one of those weird situations where we had access to computers, and the nerds at the time who would be interested in doing that stuff were easily able to create stuff at a very young age. We even had Java in my high school, which is also super fortunate because even in the United States, it's like rare. But what's funny about the Java classes, we did the same thing. Basically, one or two people would actually write it, and we'd all share the code and just build games the rest of the class. And the teacher eventually found that out and ended up giving us all A's because you couldn't flunk us all out. I've been programming ever since I was maybe 12 or 13 years old. It's always been a hobby, and it was very gamified for me. Ruby, I would say Metasploit was something I was always interested in as well, like hacking stuff. When I was like 15, 16, I would mess around with Wi-Fi. At the time, I was super insecure, like you could do web freaking hacking pretty easily. So Metasploit and Ruby were my first, like, I would say actual scripting programming languages, which really went pretty well because later on Roar or Ruby on Rails became popular, and that was a whole onboard ramp. I already knew what Ruby was, could already use it. But really, my first job had nothing to do with programming. It was actually sales in a Japanese corporation. Yeah. So like nothing at all to do with programming after I graduated. I was basically going to foreign companies in Japan and speaking in all Japanese, like a black suit, doing the whole like passing the cards around thing. I don't know how familiar you are with Japanese culture, but there's a very like formal etiquette. Yeah. It's super formal. What ended up happening was I was at a client, like doing work for them, and I realized, or they basically say, hey, you're good at this engineering stuff, just come in, you can like program it yourself, you can help build it. But being sales, I knew how much I was invoicing them for at like 22, and I saw the differential between my wage and what I was invoicing them for. I'm like, oh, this is not going to work. Like, there's a huge gap here where I'm making this company a lot of money basically by going there and it's not getting paid. I think it was like $2,000 a month or something crazy. Japan always has pretty low wages for new hires. So I quit there and immediately decided to do my own company. And I've ever since then, I'm 33 now, so it's been like 10 years of basically building and running my own companies.
Wow, nice. And yeah, you mentioned before about your partner or your colleague, Human Sadaf, that we interviewed in the podcast, Let's Talk ICP, a month ago. Yeah, considering Human as a visionary and also as a good investor, yeah, I think he immediately realized the talent that you have. I would know more about the story, about how you met Human and how you start the projects together, and how it was the initial connection, and then how you create the ICME Labs together. You convinced him, or he convinced you, or it was like at the same time, both of you mentioned as you want to build something without coding and then start the business, or how it works? How was the story about you and Human?
Yeah, we both applied for the grant at the same time with a similar idea. And I don't think this is like it's not secret information or whatever. The person who was running the grant at the time kind of connected the dots for us. Like, hey, you both applied to the same grants, maybe you should talk. She then moved on to Polychain. So now she's actually like an investor with Polychain Capital, which is also an interesting story.
Yeah.
But at the time she was running the grant program, and she would always make these really like cool connections that I don't think regular people would make. She's like, oh, you guys are the same, so you might as well introduce. And she was really good at that like matchmaking type of thing. But I ended up winning the grant, and I put kind of the connection with Human on pause until fall that year. So I just would focus on building for like a month or 2 months straight. And after I released MVP, I realized like it's pretty impossible as a founder. Like I've done companies by myself. It's super hard trying to do things by yourself. There's a whole business aspect, a whole setting up a legal entity, etc. That it's just like, if you want to just sit down and build something, it shouldn't be the thing you should focus on. And Human has taken off most of that stress for me. So now I can focus purely on product and getting stuff out that's useful for people. So that's the relationship. And also he's, I think, way more eloquent than I am. He speaks very clearly, which helps.
Yeah, he's a professor, right?
Exactly. So it's
he's used to. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, he's just very, very clear. So it's I think he's been speaking about no code and Web3 for like 5 or 6 years straight, and it definitely shows in the way he talks about it. And also his tweets are awesome. Like I had a Japanese friend the other day, doesn't even speak English, but he's like, Human's tweets are awesome. Like I translate them and I love the content of his tweets. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah. More about the ICME Labs. For people who don't know anything about this fabulous project, ICME is a trailblazing no-code website, an application builder for the internet computer. Yeah, through ICME, a smooth, secure, and easy-to-use platform, users can deploy everything from blogs, storefronts, and even their own dApps directly on the blockchain with no code, no manuals, and no learning curve. This is awesome. Yeah, can you give us more details of ICME for people who are thinking of moving or adding their business to the Web3, to the ICME, and how they can create their web page or switch or transfer their business to Web2 from Web2 to Web3 through ICME?
Yeah, I think from both a business aspect and technical aspect, it's an interesting project, because the way we think about things is everything's like you said, content Legos is a good way to explain it. Everything's its own module. So we have all these canisters that you can go in and deploy with basically a click of a button. So if you want an NFT canister for self-minting, you can go to ICME, sign up, and press deploy. If you want to gain control later on, we can give you your keys and you're free to go with it. But everything we do is a module, and it has both a Web2 and a Web3 API. So you can use it with a tool that you're already using. If you're using Bubble, WordPress, whatever, you can actually use our modules there as well. So we have this modularization of code that we set up to be immutable. So if you do an NFT code, you push it out and you shouldn't be changing it very often, if at all, which gives it a pretty unique, I would say from a business perspective, pretty unique way of pushing stuff live that is not possible on Web2. Because you can have all these standalone canisters kind of interact with one another, connecting like Legos, basically. And Kinic is actually one of those API. So like we have a whole search API that is actually being used by Dfinity and a few other people as well to do useful things like find new websites, or find what's the newest DeFi coming out on the IC, or find malicious phishing sites that might come up on the IC to dissuade them from making more phishing sites on the IC. There's a whole bunch of useful stuff you can do with it. And it's just one example of one of our modules. So we have an NFT module, we have a payment module, which allows you to take fiat credit cards and execute smart contracts on the IC. We have a search module, which is what this conversation is about, KINIC API. But with these modules, you can do super cool things like create an NFT campaign and then accept credit cards for those NFTs, or create your own digital e-commerce shop. Part of the businesses right now actually is doing digital collectible loyalty programs. You might have heard last week, Meta started doing NFTs with Instagram, and before that, Starbucks. But a bunch of companies are jumping on board doing these digital collectible loyalty programs. And it's one thing you could easily do with ICME. Like you can come in, deploy a minter, and also deploy the front end on chain as well, and have this full collection of collectible loyalty programs without spending a lot of money or doing a lot of research on the underlying thing. So I feel like if you're going to do it and you want to do an MVP and you want to save a lot of time and money, starting with ICME is the best option right now. And then if you want to move it later, you're obviously free to do that. So if you want to make it more custom, more unique, whatever, you can take it off. Or even if you're using WordPress or something already, like you already have a website up and you just want to use NFTs, or you just want to use one portion of Web3, you can obviously do that now.
Also, one of your models has had 500,000 unique users in only 3 months, right? Which one is this model? Is it KINIC or?
Yeah, Kinic is a huge, like KPIs on Kinic are insane. When we first pushed it out, the design was really poor, and I think even at that aspect, like it was brown. Like I designed it by myself at the time, so it was really kind of embarrassing. It was like a brown background with like a search bar, basically. And even with that, just because it was novel and people were finding useful things, it was getting like 10,000 unique hits per day. They're not users, they're not logged in, so we don't count them as users. We call each one a unique session, which means like a person comes in and does 1 to 3 things and then leaves. It counts as one session. And to date, we've had 5 million plus sessions of people coming on. Obviously, the build up to Supernova was the largest. It was 10K plus per day, and it's been off and on. You'll see little waves in our data for just hits on canisters. And the cool thing about that as well is we can actually provide hits for specific canisters. So if you want to see, like, if you're just an example, like a portal app would be an example. You want to see where people are coming from or what search terms they were doing to find portal, you would be able to get that data from KINIC API as well. So it's just useful altogether. We obviously don't collect any personal information from our users. And later on, if we do decide to allow users to create their own like search canister, I would call it, then they could have full control over like their search results and what people can see anyway. So it's a pretty unique model. And I think it's people who are using it on both ends, the end consumers who are searching and also the people who are using the data are all finding it super useful.
Yeah, this is the world's first Web3 search engine. And also, yeah, for sure. And also resolve a difficult problem to attract several people to Web3. And the thing is that discoverability for Web3 not always is easier to find if you want to invest or buy any NFT or invest in any product. Sometimes when you Google it, you can find it, anything. And I think KINIC solved this problem. I'm not pretty sure you use like an advanced system or any method to find all this information, but all the things that are built on the blockchain and related with Web3 in KINIC, you can find it, right? That's super cool.
Anything that is on the IC right now, you can find. There's a few other chains that have the power to host front-end content, but the thing is they're not as cool and they don't have as many as the IC. We researched if we could do it, or if it was possible to do, and we definitely could do like Airweave, Filecoin, a few other that have the potential to host front-end services. But even then, it's only a few, like 1,000 plus. It's not like a huge number of front-end websites running on those. But I think what's important, I think it kind of connects back to the original vision of the IC, was that if you're hosting your products on AWS or you're hosting them on a cloud provider, there's this huge centralization point. And that centralization point can potentially turn off your service or mess with your service so it doesn't work anymore. And same is true with SEO. Like if you build something new and no one can find it and it's controlled by one central person, it's a huge loss for society. Like they can just say, oh, you don't exist, you don't show up in search results, it's gone. So even with the fix for SEO on the IC, this, I think it was like a month ago, there's still this central player, Google or whoever the search engine you use is. There's only 1 or 2 like real ones out there. They're always going to be a central player, and they're always going to be able to take your data and use it the way they see fit. And if you don't play by the rules, you basically get shadow banned, like you won't be discovered. And its discoverability is probably one of the hugest issues with Web3. If we don't have a way to make it discoverable, it's basically all for naught. And that was a huge motivation behind KINIC as well. Like we need to get these new sites, new products up and discovered, easily to be found away from this centralized Web 2 SEO.
Okay. In terms of growth for the ICME Labs and Kinic, what is your expectations for the next years? And also if you have any external support now as like venture capitals or business angels or any other investor that are supporting now the project. And then what is the next updates for ICME or for KINIC? You mentioned about the SNS1 token, and you can share more information about these things, the growth, and then the updates for the KINIC.
For ICME, we're actually doing a Web 2 focused launch on something called Product Hunt. What Product Hunt allows you to do is have it like a campaign for one day, and a bunch of Web 2 users will come and try your service. But what we're focusing on with that, like we just did this a few weeks ago, is we actually have our NFTs on Stoic now, so you can connect with wallets. But we're going to have it set up so you can make your own store. Like you can mint your own tokens, make your own store, and be able to sell directly from your ICME project. So that's on our short-term roadmap. For Kinic, what we're going to use right now is actually the API. So there's a lot of different things that are useful for, like even if you're building a site on IME or your ICME, or you're building a site on the IC in general, there's a lot of useful information that's in there. So we're making the Web3 API more accessible for more people. So you'll be able to do things like, hey, where are these users coming from, or what are their search terms? Like, what are they actually interested in that brings them to my website or my DApp? Or how many clicks are we actually getting from Web3? Like, it's pretty, especially if we're not using analytics. Like, I don't use Google Analytics on any of my Web3 projects out of moral or whatever. Don't want to like give them extra data that they have. Might be taking from your browser anyway. But yeah, we don't use analytics in that sense. So I think a lot of other projects as well don't. And having just a backend API for doing that. But what we can also do, which I think is super cool, is your handle. Like if you have an @ handle and you're posting stuff onto Web3 with an @ handle, we'll just say @Dominic Williams as an example. You can actually search all Web3 via Kinic and find what you wrote. So you might have wrote something on Nuance with your handle, and you might have posted something on ICME, have your own website. As long as you have the handle somewhere, it connects the handles together, and you can have something really cool like a decentralized services that can basically, you can share your followers about them. But there's a bunch of cool stuff we can do with the API, just to make it short. I think other apps that come to the ecosystem will also be able to use that as well and be able to do pretty cool stuff. As far as backing goes, we did a pre-seed last year, and they're mostly angels. There are people who are famous and are so famous kind of around the IC space. We did that, and then we tried to go for, or we're still in the rounds this year for a full seed. But as you know, it's a bear market, so we'll see what happens. Last year, it's not. But our whole model has always been about becoming profitable and staying profitable anyway. Like we have a B2B focused model. Like there is we are always focusing on customers and end users, and that is where we should spend our time. It shouldn't be all about fundraising. And I feel like we're going to do a quick round, see what happens, and then just continue from there. And I think with what's kind of interesting about doing a round right now is the main VCs in the IC space, I think, are either burnt out or they're not investing as heavily as they were the first year. So it's I think a lot of the projects from the first year are actually trying to do rounds right now, and they're hitting the same VCs. But the real cool thing about this situation is that we have to branch outside of the little bubble that we're in. So we have to go outside of the IC ecosystem to find either new investors, new companies to buy our products. And it's a huge growth event where you'll see companies doing things that are last year would have been easy. Like, hey, we're just going to do an NFT and it's going to fund our entire project. This year, what we're actually do is have real people and real companies like helping fund those projects. So using it and paying for usage, or using a module of the company and paying for that module usage, etc. So I think long term, it's going to be a good thing for the IC, because all these companies are going to be battle tested, like forged in fire. The SNS is an interesting thing to see come out as well. We'll see how that goes. Like if it's user funded, user hosted, and user run, it's going to be pretty insane, because the people who are using it the most are obviously going to help finance it. And it's the opposite of the VC model, which I think is pretty interesting for centralized companies, but it's also interesting to see how it merges with this newer DAOization or DAO type model. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting year, especially during the bear market. I actually kind of like bear markets, which might sound mean, but I feel like it's, as a builder, like we just get to focus on building and remove all the bullshit. Build our products and see what happens.
Yeah, now it's time to build, right?
Exactly.
The down markets is time to build for sure. Okay, yeah, you mentioned also for KINIC, it's run 100% on chain, on Internet Computer Protocol. But for example, if I try to find something about other blockchains, other projects, I can find some information on KINIC, or this is something that you're working on, or it's just focusing on the ICP and the community of ICP, all the dApps and all the information and internet computer, or also focusing on other blockchains?
Yeah, that's since most of the listeners here will be from the IC community, they might not like the fact, but yeah, if Airweave gave me a grant to index all the Airweave canisters, I would absolutely do that. But I don't think they really care very much because there was only 1,000 dApps on there. And they already have a list, is the interesting part. There's already like a way to get all the lists from Airweave. They call it the Permuweb, which is interesting. But you can get from Airweave, there's probably 2 or 3 chains that we would do. And we tried to get grants from some of these, and we're either pending or we're just like, no, we're not interested. It doesn't matter to us. Like, we're just going to do Web2 SEO. So we'll see what happens. I think it would be interesting if they actually gave us a grant, we were able to index it, and there's a merging of these front ends, or these technologies that can hold front ends, because I think there are some things that can superpower if we work together, rather than always trying to like diss one another and outdo the other one. Because there's some cool things out there anyway. It's like Airweave, I think, is cool with the Permuweb because you can actually host the files on chain 100%, like forever. Yeah. I don't know if it's gonna be true or not. Like, we don't know with time if it's actually gonna work out that way. But with the IC, when we have files hosted, you have to keep the cycles up, or the canister eventually disappears. So that's one thing I can see a merger on. Like, we'd have the programmability on the IC, but maybe have like legal documents hosted on Airweave and have those so they're there forever, no matter what. But there's some things like that, I don't know, just from a technical aspect that they could benefit one another from, and get out of the whole tribal mentality where it's only IC, we're the IC tribe, we don't like anything else, and work together with others across the space.
Yeah, no, exactly. This is something like, for sure, it's not only ICP on the ecosystem, and also for the success of blockchain and cryptos in general, we need to attract people from Web2, and it's not just like a tribe, right? It's in general, if we want to like convert all the Web2 users to Web3, we need to do it together, right? Not just one blockchain, for sure.
That's the one thing about that, real quick, just before we change subjects. The BTC integration for us at ICME Labs is all about that. Like, if we have BTC integration, we can potentially bring in everyone from the entire crypto space. Like, I've been messing around with the marketing terminology. Like, we are the Lego company, the content Lego company, but we're also adding in like, hey, the internet computer is potentially the Polygon of Bitcoin. Like, you have Polygon for Ethereum, which is just faster, more scalable. Smart contracts on Ethereum. We will basically, or essentially, have like a Polygon type model for BTC, where companies will be able to use it or use BTC in a much more scalable and profitable way for them.
Nice. Okay, just one question more about people that are listening now that start their careers and want to like be also a programmer or entrepreneur. Do you have any advice to give to the audience about your career, or something like you have more than 12 years of experience like programming, and maybe you can share something about people like are thinking now to create their own business, and market is down, maybe it's not the best time, it's pretty risky. Any advice for?
Number one advice I would give any new founder is, do not build your project without verification first. A good way to do this is just get a landing page, make a Twitter, and like have all of your most important information on the landing page, and have a sign up button, like sign up here to get more information before you do anything else. Like, it should just be the pitch to see how many people come to your website and are actually interested enough to give you their email or give you the ability to connect back with them. And you can do this in maybe a week or a weekend. If you're good at coding, you can use no-code tools like ICME, or you can use Wix, whatever you want. Just make a landing page first before you do anything. Because what we see a lot with developers and first-time founders is like, you spend a ton of energy like building an MVP, and you finally build it and there's no demand for it. We're just like, oh yeah, that's whatever, like we don't even want to use it. And if you do this other way around, it helps you in a few different ways. One, you get verification, like your idea is a good idea. Two, you actually get a list of people who are your first customers, right? So you build the project, and then you have lists of people that can go, hey, here's the project, everyone try it out. And 3, in the old world, it would give you, or the old SEO world, you would have a 1-year limit. It's called a new site limit, where basically if you're a new website or a new domain, you get a push down in the list. But if you already had your domain up and a landing page up running for a year, you get a boost from that. So number 1 is like just build a landing page, see what happens. Verify your idea first with landing page. I think it's golden advice for any would-be web developer or entrepreneur.
Nice.
Sorry.
Yeah, good advice. And what is your favorite programming language, just for finish? Maybe it's a difficult question. I'm not an IT. I'm not programmer. Maybe it's like difficult question for a programmer. But yeah,
It's actually really like functional programming languages are fun for me because they're kind of like abstract and new. So I think Motoko, when I first tried it, it felt pretty functional because you have the whole type system, and there's things that are immutable and not. But for a first-time developer, I also think this is something that someone told me earlier as well, like whatever's most productive for you is probably what you should use. JavaScript obviously is front end, back end, Node.js. I mean, TypeScript is whatever. We have even TypeScript on the IC now. So it's one of the 3 languages you can choose. You can choose Rust, Motoko, or TypeScript. And I think just the whole JS TypeScript background will give you a lot of opportunities, because even with everything else, you use NPM to download dependencies a lot of the time. So just learning JavaScript is probably pretty good starting point.
Awesome. Great. Okay. Yeah, that's all. Thank you so much, Wyatt Benno, for your time today. All the best on your projects on KINIC and ICME Labs. Good luck also with Human. Looking forward for see the new updates and the growth of the companies. That's pretty cool. One of the best projects in the entire ecosystem on ICP. Yeah, and thank you so much for staying with us today.
Yep, thank you so much.
Okay, see you. Thank you. Bye-bye.